Hey, what's up? So today's question in the creating community that I want to answer is, how can I be more stable and less impulsive with my money? How can I be more stable and less impulsive with money? The way I want to answer it is to share how I'm actively creating that in me and in my life right now. I'm in the process of that. So some backstory first. Throughout my life, maybe you've been watching my videos for a while, you know I've always been an entrepreneur. Pretty much never had a job except for as a young kid while in school or for 6 weeks after university. But other than that, as a teenager, I started my own businesses and I've been creating businesses since then. Mostly small businesses, sole proprietorships, consultancies, web media firm, real estate, things like that. But I've been basically creating money from nothing for years. 25 years, I guess I could say now. I'm 40. And so I've made millions of dollars throughout my life, and I've also spent millions of dollars throughout my life. You could say I don't have much to show for it financially if you were to look at my financial statements and things like that. I don't actually live inside that reality, even though it's culturally normal to experience yourself as not having created that much if you don't have something left over, because I look at my life and its creations as the experiences that I've had more than the money that's in a bank account. And so I've lived that way my whole life. I've made money and I've spent money. I've created the money I needed for the experiences that I want, and I've had them. And I've had a very high, what some people will call a high tolerance for risk, although I don't experience it that way, because for me, the thing that's potentially dangerous from not having money isn't dangerous to me. So when you don't have the fears, can you really call it risk? But however, over the last 10 years, as I have developed a sense of self that's bigger than just me, but also includes other people, namely now my wife and my son, my living by the seat of my pants and enjoying that roller coaster of making money to have what I want and spend it has started to shift and change. And so now I have people who depend on me financially, my wife and my son. And so I don't necessarily want to take them. I don't want to take them along for that ride anymore. And so my values have shifted since having a family to actually want to retain some of the money that I'm creating so that there's some runway, right? Instead of having a few months, having a few years in the bank would be nice. Having some assets built up would be nice so that if anything were to happen to me, besides a life insurance policy, there's also some money in the bank that could help take care of them. And at the same time, it's also nice to just have some money in the bank for your monthly expenses, to know that the money is there already so you can sit back and relax. For some people, having more money in the bank to give them more of a sense that they're not in a hurry can help them be more relaxed. And being relaxed, as I talk about very often in my videos, is like a foundation to creating powerfully. When you're relaxed, when you're at peace, you can be creative with your mind, you can hear and trust your intuition, you can be clear, you can be decisive, you have more energy. And so if the circumstances of your financial life can be one of the factors that actually influence you to feel relaxed and peaceful, then you'd want to create circumstances that are advantageous to that. Most of my work is on what we can do on the inside, despite external circumstances, to create relaxation and peace. But I also acknowledge that the circumstances are consequential, while at the same time they're not. Both things matter. So today I want to talk about how to create stability and less impulsiveness in the use of money and the management of money, and I'll share that by how I'm doing that. And so when I realized that it was time for me to make a change because my values had shifted, I started looking for help. I looked for some books, I looked for financial advisors, financial consultants, asked my accountant, and it was interesting because I would ask people for help with what I knew that I wanted, and their suggestions kept missing the mark. Financial advisor would give me advice on what to invest in, or buy this life insurance. And it's like, I can see that would create some longevity, but the problem is actually my way of relating to money, my way of actually using it when I have it. It's not where to put it so much, it's how do I change my process of making decisions about what I do with it and where to put it. It was really a behavioral change that I wanted to make, and I kind of had some awareness of it, but the more people I talked to, the more I realized that's actually what I needed. I needed to change my relationship to money that I have. I've developed a pretty healthy, profitable relationship with money in the sense of bringing it in and creating it. And I've also developed, I want to be careful right here, I just caught the possibility of me actually doing something we don't want to do. That's in the question. I've also developed a relationship with spending money that's very happy and healthy for a value system that was, if I have money and spend it on experiences, that's good. That gives me what I want. That's the life I want. Now I say a healthy relationship with spending money that has all of it go out because I'm going to judge my ways of being as positive, as okay. That doesn't mean that I don't have also a desire to change them and create something differently. That means that I'm not going to actually condemn myself for the ways that I've been being around money my whole life. I mean, I enjoyed it. Why would I now all of a sudden, because my values shift, judge that as wrong? And so actually, the first thing we want to do is look at this question. How can I be more stable and less impulsive with my money? No, to be stable presupposes there's an instability. Maybe there is. Or maybe that's just one way of describing the situation with your money. And maybe it's that my money goes up and down. And that's the fact. But calling it stable adds a layer of meaning to it. Or unstable. By desiring stable, you're referring to the other as unstable. It adds a layer of meaning to it. And even more directly, we can say the way that I've been spending money is impulsive. And I've actually used that word to describe my life in the way that I've been with money. Not most of the time, but when I start to slip into my new value set about retaining money and retaining wealth and building wealth, and I look at the way I was before, I'm quick to judge when I'm not paying attention. But the problem is, if I'm judging that as wrong because it's now in conflict with my current values, I'm setting up a dynamic of conflict and judgment where I want to change something that's a pattern in me that I'm saying isn't good. And it might sound like this is a little a side point or less important, but it's actually the most important point. The way in which I relate to the parts of me, sorry, street sweeper going by. The way that I relate to the parts of me that I want to change is the most consequential factor in my ability to change that part of me, to change that pattern. So if I'm looking at the way that I've spent money my whole life enjoyably, never had a problem with it, and now I start judging it as impulsive, then my access to changing that is basically shut off because I'm in conflict with it. And every time I think it's not good, it creates internal frustration and it actually entrenches it even more. Because I don't like having a boss out there, never mind in here, so I'm going to resist that, right? And so I'm going to continue to be quote unquote impulsive. Because screw you for judging me. This is all the internal conversation. The same thing that happens between people happens inside you. So the first thing I want to do is change my question if I were asking that. And instead of saying, how can I stop being bad, unstable, and bad, impulsive, and how can I be more stable and more, whatever the opposite of impulsive would be, instead of looking for an opposite response to something I don't like, I will actually ask myself, what would I love to create? And I will ask that from a knowing of what my values are. And my values are that I would love to retain money and have more runway and have more wealth so that if anything were to happen to me, my family would be taken care of. And what I would love to create is more money in the bank and more conservative financial spending. I would love to create that, not as a reaction to anything, but just as an expression of my values that they are today and now. And 6 years from now, 10 years from now, they may be something different, and then I'll create differently from that. And so the first thing I want to do is get my question straight. So how can I create a more conservative way of relating to and being with money? And so then once I knew that behavioral change is what I really want, not just some advice on where to put money, I want to change the way I relate to it once I have it. And then I also knew what my question was. How can I create a more conservative financial way of being? Where I'm conserving wealth. And then therefore when I'm conserving it, investing it, and growing wealth. Start asking people who do that. And then the next problem I run into, which of course I know this, but I have to go and find it out every time. Just because somebody's good at something or doing something or has a pattern of behavior doesn't mean they're able to, one, see it, never mind, two, explain it to you. So this person that I know or this family member is financially conservative and, hey, so how do you actually save money when you make it? They're just like, you just save it. You just don't spend so much. I'm like, oh, thanks. I mean, like, I know, but like, how do you do that? And people that have a pattern that have developed it unconsciously because that's just their circumstances they grew up in. Maybe they grew up in a household or a place where that was just their conditioning, or for somehow they learned that. unconsciously, it's not a conscious process. It's just, I'm just doing what I do. I get coins and I put them in the piggy bank. I don't know. I mean, how do you do that? How do you say how you do that? And so the question I'm asking is, what is the internal representation you have of money? What meaning do you make of money? Money that you receive, money that you have in the bank. How do you relate to it when it's in there? And how do you make decisions? Like, what do you feel about it? And where do these ideas about saving come from? What is your map of reality that has that even happen? Asking most people that question is they're just gonna look at me like I've got 5 heads and not even really know what I'm talking about. And so I knew that I needed to find somebody that not only that had this behavior, but it could also see where the behavior comes from, so I could have a conversation with them where they were capable of not only having that skill, but articulating it and communicating in a way where they could teach me. And that is where I, thank goodness, came to discover my now coach, who I'm working with specifically on this, because this is exactly what she does. Her name is Amber Duggar, and she has an online program called Profit for Keeps. It's part of the Profit First coaching community, or whatever industry. So there's a book by Mike Michalowicz called Profit First that I read. It was actually recommended one of my clients. Great book. And it's really about this problem I'm talking about, this challenge that all entrepreneurs go through, but not in the form of saving to create wealth, but in the form of taking profit from the company. Same problem, different place. Personal versus business. Same thing. But Mike wrote this book about the business side of it, how people don't take profit and therefore they're never creating profit no matter how high the business scales. And a great book, and I thought it was very interesting. And then I found my way to Amber, and she basically teaches this way of thinking about money and relating to money in your personal life, and then also that maps over to your business life. Because once you learn the patterns and behaviors, it applies in both places the same way. Different names for it, wealth savings versus profit, but it's essentially the same thing. And so I hired Amber, and I've done her online course, Profit for Keeps, which is fantastic. And the first thing she has had me do is set up a budget in a system called YNAB, Y-N-A-B. That's an acronym for You Need a Budget. I don't even like the name because I've always had a negative feeling to this word budget, and I'll say why about that in a second. But I love the software because it should actually be called You Need Multiple Bank Accounts instead of You Need a Budget, because it's essentially what it feels like. And so in simple terms, I'm not going to go into that. If you're interested in learning more, go check out Amber's website. I'll link it here somewhere. Check out ynab.com. But essentially what it is it's a piece of software that you hook into your online banking, and it takes your one bank account. You don't need multiple bank accounts, literally. You need one bank account, put all your money in there, and then this divides up the money that's in your account into a bunch of separate accounts. So it's now I've got 50 bank accounts. And I've got my grocery shopping bank account, I've got my eating out at restaurants bank account, I've got my coffee shops bank account, and I've got all these little mini bank accounts. So instead of looking at one big chunk of money that I have right now and thinking, I'll spend from this big chunk, I've actually made a decision at the beginning of the month, or every month, whenever money comes in, how much of those dollars are going to go into each of these little accounts. And then I just live from those little accounts. And here's where the internal growth has come for me. Before, when I heard the word budget, it was I've got all this money, and then I've got some rules up there called a budget that's telling me how I have to spend my money. This is my money right here. All of it's mine, and there's some rules out there that I have to live to. And that always felt like a trap or like a prison for me. It's like some authority or structure that I had to meet with all my money right here. And I don't want to do that. I want to do what I want to do, what's important to me. And then when I started working with this and listening to Amber and asking her the questions about not only what to do, the mechanics of the software, it's pretty easy, it's pretty straightforward. If you have any practice doing stuff like that, you'll get it quickly. What I was interested in and what the focus of our coaching sessions has been is how she actually thinks about it. How do you relate to money that comes in? What does it feel like to move money from one place to the other? And I started to develop a relationship with this software and with this moving my money into separate accounts, which was, oh, wait a minute, all these little accounts, each account and its name, and I put some emojis in there to really make an expression of what matters to me, like coffee shops, little coffee cup. And each of these little accounts are expressions of my values. They're things that I care about. And so imagine you had a bunch of little jars or buckets on your table, and each one had labels of things that you loved. And every time you got a chunk of money, you say, I'm going to put a little bit in this, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. You've got all these buckets with money, or pails, or envelopes, or whatever you want to think, however you want to visualize it. And it's all yours. You've just divided it up. And now, at any point, so I'm going to the coffee shop, and I've got $300 for coffee shops for the month, for example, in there. And it gets towards the end of the month, and I've used the 300 up, and I've got 6 days left in the month. And so it's not going. In the beginning, it was is this feeling scarcity? And there were moments of that. I'll talk about that in a second. But actually, what I most experience is this bucket that had $300 in it for coffee is now empty. But I really want a coffee. Okay, cool. I mean, there's money in the other buckets, so let me go get some out of one of them. Okay, cool. Oh, which one am I going to get it out of? And this is what I really enjoyed. To move money from one bucket to the other is really easy in the app. You just move the money. But taking pause, every time I'm about to use more money than I've put in a bucket, and thinking, not just am I going to take more from this big group of money that has no purpose, but where am I going to take money from? Is it my restaurant's bucket? Or is it my kid's swimming budget or stuff on Amazon bucket? I can take it from wherever I want. It's all mine. But that moment of consideration about where I'm going to take it from, that's new for me. That's something I never did in my life before, is in a moment of spending, think about, anytime I spend money on this, what's the impact on the other things that are important to me? And suddenly, every moment of spending has now become an opportunity to reflect on my values. Before, when I would spend based on my feeling about what I wanted. And that's always been how I've spent and created. What would I love and act? What would I love and act? What would I love and act? The problem with that is my experience of what I've loved is also affected by the environment. So I know what's true for me and what's not, but it's also the focus on what's true and what's not is based on what's the impetus out there, right? And so the system allows me to be connected to all of the things that are true for me and that what matter at the same time. So I'm connected to what's true for me and what I would love in this bucket and that bucket. And I'm reflecting on every bucket is something that I love. And I start to become capable of prioritizing my spending based on my relationship to everything and every moment of spending on one thing. So it's raising my consciousness as to what my values are. And it's turning spending from something that serves the moment to serves my heart and my life as a whole, including the money to retain for my family to create that pool of wealth for longevity for my family if anything were to happen to me or whatever. I talked about artificial scarcity, or maybe I didn't use a phrase, but that's a phrase that Amber uses that I love. And I've experienced what she calls artificial scarcity is because the moment we start putting money into these separate buckets, and all of a sudden, oh my God, my coffee bucket's empty, and I love going out for coffee, and I don't have any, oh my God, I have no money. That's empty, but all these other buckets are full, so I'm not actually scarce. And so it's a really interesting experience to feel scarcity for a moment, and then to realize it was just because of the way that I was looking at it. Suddenly I moved this over there, and oh, everything's okay again. Wow, is that the thing that's generating scarcity? Just my idea about where money is? And so as I've been working through that, I'm also realizing it's the same thing, whether money's in my bank account or somebody else's bank account. It's just a movement of money. And so the way that I relate to moving money from other people's accounts to mine is now how I'm relating about moving money between my own accounts. And it's just money is liquid and it flows in abundance. One of my primary mantras around finances. Money is liquid and it flows in abundance. It just moves. I don't even have to do anything. Just open the door and it flows to the dam and it goes into the next space, right? Retaining pools with rivers between them, tributaries connecting them all. Yeah. The most important thing that I want to get across here, the undercurrent, let's stay with the liquid metaphor, of all of this, is to change something about yourself because you don't like it screws you. it becomes an obstacle. The moment you want to change something because you don't like it about yourself, it becomes an obstacle. Now we have a new value, we have something in our heart that's important to us, and we bastardize it by turning it into a response to something we don't like. Get out of that polarity and duality and get back into pure creation. There's something that I would love to create, not as a judgment against anything else, but just something that I would love to create. And then you go and create that. The second thing, the other undercurrent, the deeper undercurrent of all of this is, if you want to create a way of being in yourself, you really just need to realize that like any behaviors that you have, they're just patterns. They're patterns of behavior that have resulted from your conditioning and your choices and just the stuff that's happened in your life. Don't beat yourself up about it, like I said, and go and get some new patterns. You just have to download new ways of representing reality. If you think about money as an object, it will feel heavy, it will require labor to move it. If you relate to money as liquid, metaphorically, conceptually, you'll take very small actions and it will flow into your life. The way we represent reality is similar to how we represent ourselves. It is the underpinning of all of our behaviors and actions. Right? I know that this car is moving in the street because I represent it that way, and so I don't just walk out into it. I look both ways. That's how I represent reality. And the way that a financially conservative person represents money in their mind, the way they think about it, is different than a person who's financially liberal with their money, who spends. And so if you want to change, you don't need to punish yourself or beat yourself up. You just need to adapt the patterns in your mind and in your body and your seeing and your hearing, thinking, smelling, tasting, all of it, so that when you experience money, you have the impulse, let's use that word creatively, the impulse, the intuition to act in such a way that is more financially conservative. And so how am I looking to do that? I'm looking to find the people like Amber who are that way, who can also have a conversation at a level where you can actually map that out. With Amber, all the time in our coaching sessions, I say, Amber, how do you think about that? Like, what do you actually feel at that moment when you're moving money, when you're making a decision about how much money to put in an account so many months ahead so that you can hire somebody new for your team? Like, how do you think about it? What goes on in your body? And I'm listening so closely for all the little nuances about the representation of wealth and money and finance and how it all works together. Because I just want to download her map. Essentially, I want to download her map. I want to try all of it on. The pieces that work for me and that feel good, keep them, and the ones that don't, let it go. You have to let go of the idea that who you are is you. Yeah, I actually mean that. Who you are, not even who you think you are, who you actually are. Who you actually are in the sense that your collection of patterns, like that's not you. And the reason I say that is because if you can get that your patterns and the way that you show up is not really you, that you're something greater than that, then you can let go of any attachment to that, of any value of that. And you can just, it's just this body that's functioning these ways. It's like, I just got a body, right? And then money comes into this body's bank account and this body goes, ooh, feels this, does that, ooh. And it's like this just body. Let's just want to, if I could take the head off, spin around, put it back on, twitch the arm around, take this arm off, put that over there, blah, 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 blah. And now it's just a different body that when money comes into this body's bank account, it goes blah, 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 instead of blah, blah, blah. That's all I'm looking to do. And it's one pattern at a time. And those patterns are constructed through meaning. How do we do that? Well, that's what all of the work in the creating community is about. The foundation is understanding that everything that we represent is an illusion and it's made up, so we can be free from it. And in that spaciousness, that peace, start to cultivate and inculcate new patterns through the way we represent things in our mind, the way we see the world and see ourselves. Creates new neurology, creates new sensory system, literally. We sense the world differently. We have new ideas, we have new feelings, we take new actions, and we create a new external circumstance. Creating is about both an epistemological and an ontological change. You change both your experience and your actual world. And it's the best place to learn to create everything that you would love. Creators class is the best place to learn that. In my monthly creators class, the creating community, to have support, getting live Q&A answers from me here as well. If you're already a member, keep watching the replays. If you're not a member, join us. It's like, the price is nominal, basically, on what you will learn and the value you'll get from it. Check out some of the testimonials, what people are saying. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. And if you're interested in learning more about Amber's work, click the link. She's fantastic. Even if you're just doing her online course, very much worth it. Much love to you. Bye for now.